Hey friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. We have all seen it, and I know we're all from different parts of the country, different parts of the globe, but I think it's pretty safe to say that we're all dealing with some pretty stinky economies. Food prices are outrageous, fresh produce is pricey, and food security is becoming a luxury rather than a given. Now imagine if you could walk past all that worry straight into your backyard where you can harvest nutritional food that costs just pennies to grow. That's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. I personally feel like gardening isn't just a hobby, it's insurance. So I want to share 7 practical strategies that I have spent years testing in my own garden that can help you transform your backyard into a productive food system that can thrive even if the economy doesn't. We'll talk about powerful fertilizers you can make for free using materials you probably already have at home. And then I'll show you some perennials you can plant once and harvest for years to come, and much more. If you'll hang out with me for a few minutes, you will walk away with action steps that can help you feed your family regardless of what happens with the economy. Let's get started. If you are new to gardening or would like to teach your children or grandchildren this valuable skill, we have a Gardening for Beginners unit study coming soon. In the description box of the video you're watching, you will find a link where you can enter the giveaway for a chance to win a free copy. The winner will be notified by email, and everyone who enters will be notified when the unit study is available. If you're watching this video at a later date, it's possible that Gardening for Beginners is already available. If that's the case, you will be able to access it at the same link that's in the description box. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming tutorials on gardening, canning, cooking, and more. First, let's talk about making your own fertilizer. Commercial fertilizers can cost a pretty small fortune these days, but I'm going to show you 2 methods that are practically free. First up is Comfrey Tea. This is one of the gardening's best kept secrets. Comfrey is an amazing perennial plant that sends roots really deep into the soil, pulls up nutrients that most plants can't reach. Those nutrients then get stored in their leaves. When you harvest the leaves, you make a tea from them, and you are essentially creating a nutrient-rich liquid fertilizer for your garden. Here's just a quick rundown of how to make it. You'll take a bunch of comfrey leaves, roughly chop them up. I usually use scissors, sometimes just my hands, and stuff them into a bucket. I almost always use a 5-gallon bucket. Fill with water just until all of the leaves are submerged. Cover it loosely. You want to put a lid on, but not like screw down the lid or not completely shut it. And you'll let it steep for about 2 to 4 weeks. Fair warning, it will be terribly smelly, but that's how you know it's working. Once it's brewed, dilute it 1 part tea to 9 or 10 parts water and use that to feed your plants. You can simply use a watering can or a milk jug and pour it at the base of your plants, and they will grow like crazy. The second homemade fertilizer method involves raising rabbits. Now, you do not need a bunch of rabbits or a fancy setup to make this work. 1 rabbit supplies plenty of manure to work with, trust me. But here's why I recommend it so highly. Rabbit manure is what gardeners call cold manure, and it simply means that you can apply it directly to your plants without aging or composting it first. It won't burn your plants like chicken or horse manure can. If you're brand new to gardening, you may not have known that you can't just simply put animal manure into your garden. You have to let it age or compost first, usually for at least 6 months. More like closer to a year is ideal, but that's not so with rabbit manure. They can go straight onto your plants. Rabbits are quiet, they don't need much space, and they convert your garden and kitchen scraps or any store-bought food that you feed to them into premium fertilizer 24/7. If you're not ready for livestock, Comfrey Tea is your answer for producing fertilizer on your own property. But if you can manage rabbits, even just 1 or 2, your garden will thank you with incredible harvests that didn't cost an arm and a leg to fertilize. I think making your own fertilizers and having multiple options in that category is one of the best ways to think and plan ahead for potentially tough times. The second way to recession-proof your garden is by planting perennials. These are plants that come back year after year without you having to replant them, like the comfrey plants we were just talking about. Most gardeners spend money every spring buying seeds or seedlings for annual plants. Annual plants means they only have 1 growing season and then they die. They don't survive winter and come back. But what if you can plant something once and harvest it from years, sometimes even decades? That to me is like financial efficiency at its finest. So here are my top perennial recommendations for food gardens. My first go-to is berry bushes, like raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. They not only produce fruit that you would pay premium prices for at the store, but they actually spread over time, giving you bigger and bigger harvest for no extra cost. Another good one is asparagus. It gives you spring harvest for up to 20 years from a single planting. Granted, you do need to wait about 2 years before your first full harvest, so it's certainly a time investment. Not time as in it takes up a lot of time, but time spent waiting. But after that, you're looking at weeks of fresh asparagus every spring for free. Rhubarb is another champion that will produce for decades, and one plant can yield pounds of stalks every year for pies, jams, sauces. Rhubarb barbecue sauce is delicious. I mean, you name it. You can make so much with rhubarb. Last but not least, I want to mention Egyptian walking onions. They provide both green onions like your green bunching onions, but also little bulbs. And they essentially replant themselves, which is why they're nicknamed walking onions. They replant themselves each year without any work on our part as gardeners. The initial cost of perennials is higher than annuals, but the long-term economics are unbeatable. If you plant these now before economic pressure gets any worse, you'll have a little bit of food security that doesn't depend on yearly garden budget. Method number 3 might surprise you, but focus on growing calories. Now, I know calories isn't a popular word in our diet-obsessed culture, but the truth is simple that calories sustain life. If we were to ever experience a time like the Great Depression again, you'll need food that fills you up and provides energy. Most beginning gardeners focus on salad greens, tomatoes, and peppers. I certainly do. These are great for vitamins, but they're not going to keep you fed during hard times. So I recommend dedicating at least a third of your garden space to true calorie crops. Potatoes top my list. I dedicate a very large square footage area of my garden to potatoes. They produce more calories per square foot than almost any other crop. A 10 by 10 foot potato patch can yield 100 pounds of potatoes. Now, granted, that is in ideal conditions, so I wouldn't plan on 100 pounds of potatoes, but I just want to say what is possible. And that translates into roughly 35,000 calories. That's significant food security. Winter squash, like butternut squash, acorn squash, they can store for months without refrigeration and are calorie dense too. Dried beans provide calories and protein, and they're easy to grow and store, so they should definitely be on your list. And last but not least, sweet potatoes, one of my favorites. They give you an abundance of calories and incredible nutrition, particularly in warmer climates, and they can store really well as well without any further processing or preserving needed. The beauty of calorie crops is that many of them store well naturally without preservation methods like I just mentioned for the sweet potatoes. A cool closet, a basement, a root cellar, it's often all you need to keep potatoes and winter squash good and well and able to feed your family for many months after a harvest. Now, I'm certainly not saying to abandon leafy greens and other vegetables. It's just about strategic balance. Grow some of everything, but make sure you're growing significant substance. Okay, method number 4 is focus on quick growing crops. This method to maximize your garden's economic output is by focusing on crops that grow quickly and give you multiple harvests in a single season. When money is tight, you want the most bang for your gardening buck. Some vegetables take all season to produce one harvest, while others can be planted, harvested, and replanted 2, 3, or even more times in the same space. In fact, radishes are a great example of this. They can be ready in as little as 21 days. That's 3 weeks from the time that you plant. Crazy. You can plant, harvest, replant, and you get 5 to 6 harvests from the same space in a single growing season. Leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, arugula, they can be cut and will regrow several times before needing to be replanted. This is known as the cut and come again method, where you harvest the outer leaves and leave the inner leaves to continue growing. Bush beans are another great option. They can give you a harvest in about 55 to 60 days. And generally that will allow you to get 2 plantings in most, or I would say many, maybe not most, but many climates. The key here is planning. You want to map out your garden to know exactly what will go where after each of your quick crops is harvested. That's how you really start to maximize your space. This method takes a bit more attention than just planting once in the spring, but the payoff is enormous. You could get as much as 3 times the food from the same square footage. Okay, method number 5 is absolutely crucial for economic gardening, and that is learning to grow from seed. Have you priced seedlings at a garden center lately? In my area, a single tomato plant can cost $4 to $5. A packet of seeds costs around $3 to $4, but it gives you dozens of plants. And frankly, if the economy were to worsen, there's going to be more and more people that are going to start gardening. And they're likely not going to know how to grow from seed, being complete beginners, and that could lead to shortages of seedlings in the garden centers. We have seen it before. So those who know how to grow from seed will have a huge advantage. One of my favorite beginner-friendly methods for starting seeds is winter sowing using milk jugs. If you're friends of the channel, you have heard me beat this drum with a passion. It's my absolute favorite way to start seeds. But for those unfamiliar with the method, here is a quick rundown of how it works. You'll take a clean, clear plastic milk jug, cut it almost in half, leaving a hinge where the handle is. Poke some drainage holes in the bottom, like with a drill or a soldering iron. Fill the bottom with about 4 to 5, 6 inches tops of moistened potting mix. Now, this part is important. You do not want to use traditional seed starting mix. This is because we don't up-pot or switch containers throughout the plant's early growth stages. These seedlings will spend their entire early growth in the milk jugs, so they need enough nutrition to sustain that growth. Seed starting mix doesn't have that, so you need to use potting mix with this method. Plant your seeds just like you normally would. Tape the jug closed, but leave the cap off for ventilation and for rain to get in to water the seeds. Place it outside anytime from December through March where it will get natural sunlight. Now, about timing, I am in zone 7B for reference, and I will typically winter sow in February. If you are in a zone that is higher, meaning you are in a hotter and warmer zone, you would want to push that back even further. If you have a very short growing season and you need to get your seeds started a lot earlier, then you probably want to start winter sowing back in December. The seeds will stay dormant until conditions are right, then naturally germinate when the soil temperature inside the jug tells them to. The jug creates a little greenhouse effect that protects the seedlings as they grow. It doesn't matter if there is ice and snow and 5 feet of snow outside. They won't sprout until the time is right. I have heard so many times of people saying, well, this won't work for me because it's February and I have 10 feet of snow outside. Well, yes, it will. Research it. I highly, highly recommend it. In fact, as the snow melts, it is just going to water that soil really well. And those seeds are not going to wake up and sprout until the soil temperature inside your jug is proper. But by planting time, since they've been stored inside this mini greenhouse, but they still have been outside, they've already kind of been somewhat subject to the elements better or more so than indoor seed starting plants. So you're going to end up with stronger, more hardy seedlings that cost you almost nothing to grow. This method works well for perennials, vegetables, flowers, almost anything. And because the seedlings experience those natural temperature fluctuations, we don't generally have to do this really large or long hardening off process. My hardening off process is a matter of untaping the jugs for a day or two and then planting. Learning to grow from seed is not just about saving money, it's about gaining independence from commercial gardening supply chains, which is crucial during economic downturns, or really anytime. The 6th strategy builds on the previous one, and that is to learn to save your own seeds. The easiest place to start is with plants where the part that you eat is the seed. So I'm thinking beans, peas, other legumes. Those are great beginner seed-saving crops. Simply let some of your bean pods dry completely on the plant. You don't even have to harvest them first. You can let them dry right there on the vine or the bush. And then harvest and store the bean seeds in a cool, dry place. A big bonus with this method is that the seeds you save from your own garden are already well adapted to your specific gardening conditions. So in theory, they are going to work better and better for you over time. Like your seed quality is going to get better and better over time the more that you seed save from your own garden. And you cannot get that from a store. Tomatoes are another excellent choice for beginning seed savers. You can just scoop out the seeds, even with all the goop and the gel that's around them. Put the whole little clump of gel with the seeds in water for a few days. This is going to remove any germination inhibitors that might be there. Then rinse and pat them dry. Let them dry thoroughly out, like on a paper towel or a paper plate, something like that. And then move forward with storing them in a dry, cool, dark place. Lettuce and many herbs also produce seeds pretty easily, but you have to wait for them to bolt, also known as going to seed, where they produce little seed pods. And it can be kind of harder to save from those, but you just wait for those seed pods to form and harvest the seeds at that point. Some plants like carrots and cabbage are biennial, meaning they only produce seeds in their second year of life, and others like broccoli can cross-pollinate with other related plants in their family, and that can make seed saving more complex. So start with the easy ones, the ones we've already mentioned, and then build your skills from there. And within a few years, you could be potentially sourcing 80% or more of your seeds from your own garden. Use that winter sowing milk jug method to sprout them, and you are talking about an extremely frugal gardening setup. In a recession or an otherwise rough economy, this means you can keep growing food even if seed companies raise their prices or experience shortages. Our final recession-proofing strategy is arguably the most important, and that is learn how to preserve your harvest. Even the most productive garden is only valuable for economic security if you can extend its bounty beyond the growing season. There are 3 main preservation methods that I recommend mastering, and those are canning, dehydrating, and freezing. Canning is perfect for tomatoes, pickles, jams, and many fruits. Water bath canning requires minimal equipment. You can do it in a really large pot, a jar lifter, and then you're going to need your canning jars and lids. A pressure canner and a pressure canning lets you safely preserve low-acid foods like your beans and all your vegetables. We have plenty of resources here on the channel to help you learn how to can. I will link a few of those in the description box. Same for the dehydrating, which let's talk about dehydrating. It works wonderfully for herbs, fruits, and some vegetables. A basic electric dehydrator is ideal, but you can also use your oven on its lowest setting in a pinch. You could even air dry if your climate allows for that. It's generally too humid here in the South, though. Freezing is the method that is probably the easiest for beginners. You would just need to blanch your vegetables in boiling water, cool them rapidly in ice water, and then package and freeze. I typically vacuum seal. If electricity costs are a concern, then you'll want to focus on the other methods, but a well-stocked freezer can provide tremendous food security. Don't forget that traditional storage methods are available as well, like root cellaring can keep potatoes, winter squash, onions, and other crops fresh for months without processing, and even a cool closet or a basement can serve as a makeshift root cellar. The key to successful preservation is to process foods at their peak freshness and to diversify your methods. Don't rely solely on freezing or solely on canning. Learn multiple techniques to build resilience into your food system. Okay, there you have it. 7 practical ways to recession-proof your garden. I hope that was helpful to y'all, and we will see you next time. Bye!